Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is a continuation of a previous one, and in that video I delved into the history of Gremers and their connection to the celestial Neve. In this video, we'll be writing off the information I established previously, and I'll be launching my most audacious theory yet. It's not some wild shot in the dark. Hell, I bet my house with this video will age like fine wine. Don't stress if you haven't watched the previous video. I'll provide some explanation as we begin so you don't have to jump through any hoops to understand what I'm talking about here. Today, we solve void zones and put celestial discourse to rest. Now, before we begin, be sure to join the Discord at discord.gg/luminal. We do activities all the time. You can talk to me, throw theories my way, you know, the whole package. Now, are you ready? Okay, let's begin with haste, and let's solve the mystery of Deepwoken's void once and for all. So let's quickly run down what we uncovered in the first video in this two-parter. We established that the Celestials are likely the original gods of the worlds of Deepwoken, but they're sadly weaker than the invading drowned gods and the forces of the depths. The drowned gods, namely Etheron, launched an offensive to shoot down the celestial capital Constellia out of the sky, leading to Celestials crash landing on the surface. However, the conclusion I ended up reaching in the last video is that the concept of void fog, a smog that rises from the depths and blots out the stars in an attempt to misdirect sailors, is tied directly to the Celestials as a metaphor for the collapse of the civilization. This also led to theorizing about whether or not the Celestials inhabited countless other stars in the night sky. Coincidentally, this leads nicely into what I want to get into next. I'll cut straight to the chase. The void fog isn't just a metaphor, it's a literal attempt by the depths to block out the memory of what the Celestials used to be. This fog is intentionally suffocating the remnants of the Celestials. The depths is alive, my friends, and we can no longer say that the drowned gods are simply passive spectators sleeping everything off. This is deliberate behavior on the part of the drowned gods, an attempt to erase Deepwoken's former gods from the annals of history, and to starve any left surviving. However, this begs the question, are there any Celestials left alive? And if they are, where did they land? Well, we've got our answer, but we'll have to take a trip to the Ancient Rotlands if we want to find it. Now, the Ancient Rotlands are one of the aforementioned void zones that we can find spread throughout both luminates. The Rotlands in specific can be found taking up the latter half of the Songseeker Wilds, almost like an infection. The first thing you'll notice is the pitch black threshers with the emerald green eyes. The second thing you'll notice are the pulsating brains with more eyes than a huntsman spider. These brains radiate massive insanity damage, so combine a potential instant head popping with special threshers that shoot green flames out their mouths, and you've got a pretty deadly void zone. However, I'm not bringing up the Rotlands just so we can discuss their animal population. As soon as you enter the void zone, a description will flash on screen. It reads the following: the scent of decay suffocates this murky land, once the home of a fallen celestial. Yes, that's right. The reason I'm bringing up the Rotlands is because they were the ground zero for a Celestial's crash landing. Presumably, the Celestial that crashed into the Rotlands fell following the destruction of Constellia, their capital city, and was incapacitated or placed in some sort of coma. How do we know that the Celestial was damaged by their fall? Well, because we know where it's been taken. You see, if you're someone who's ran through a lot of builds and has experienced the variety of oaths that Deepwoken has to offer, I'm sure you're very familiar with Star Kindred. If you want to become a Star Kindred, you have to essentially swear loyalty to a religion surrounding the worship of Celestials. It's pretty clear through dialogue with the ringleader of the Star Kindred movement, Samael, that the Star Kindred are essentially meant to model the kind of modern cult seen in tragedies like the Jonestown Massacre. Regardless of the nature of the celestial cult, the process by which you obtain the powers of a Star Kindred is by consuming blood. The blood of a celestial, that is. And this celestial in question is underneath the derelict High Church, the center of the Star Kindred religion. The celestial we've been looking for is suddenly revealed to us. It's been restrained to a cross, incapacitated and bleeding into a pool of blood on the ground. So we've got a celestial that's fallen from the sky, which has then been kidnapped and bled dry so followers of a religious cult can consume its blood for bird powers. Let's not forget that all of this took place within and adjacent to a void zone. Now, we could definitely dismiss the forming of a void zone in the Ancient Rotlands as mere coincidence, but not only is that no fun, it's thinking like this that has stagnated Deepwoken lore content. Unless Arch himself writes void zones are coincidence on a piece of paper and ships it to my address, I'm not accepting coincidence as a conclusion. In fact, we can push the existence of the void zone within the Ancient Rotlands to its uppermost limit, and reveal the purpose of every void zone across both luminates. Okay, so the Rotlands are described as ancient, and the celestial that landed upon the Songseeker Wilds was described by Samael as falling to the surface world in a cocoon. Typically, cocoons are utilized for metamorphosis, and while I don't think that the Celestial was changing forms like a butterfly or something, I do believe that this is telling us that the Celestial is old. Like, quite old. In fact, it's possible that the Celestial had been laying in the Ancient Rotlands for a very long stretch of time before it was discovered by Samael and his Star Kindred minions. Clearly, the Rotlands don't appear as if they originated from the surface, and the brain-like masses that drive you insane also look like they came straight from some twisted hellhole in the depths. Well, that's because they did. Sit back and let me blow your mind. So, we've got our Celestial. Unlike the standard belief that the Celestial crash-landed after Constellia was destroyed, this Celestial actually crashed down upon the surface far earlier than the surge on the Celestial's capital city. This Celestial could have fallen for a number of reasons, but regardless, it found itself encased in a cocoon, unable to move. Now, this is where the Void comes into play. Like I said earlier, the depths manifest itself on the surface world in the form of the Void, the Void Sea, the Void Fog, etc. The Void acts as the fluid midpoint between the depths and the luminance, acting like a teleporter of sorts. We saw this in the Void Fog, a fog deliberately released by the depths into the luminance in order to erase the concept of the former Celestials. Now, we see this concept once again in the Void Zones across the world. I'll cut to the chase. My theory is that the depths reacted to the Celestial's landing. Void Zones are made with purpose. In fact, upon detecting the Celestial crash landing on Songseeker Wilds, the depths purposely pushed its influence upwards, creating a Void Zone to surround the fallen Celestial. Why? To attempt to corrupt it, to slay it when it wakes, or to prevent travelers from encountering it. There are countless reasons, but the truth has now become clear. These Void Zones are purposeful links between the depths and the surface world. Now, if you want to come to grips with this theory, think of Void Zones as the depths capturing important points in the surface world as its own, like capture the flag. The Ancient Rotlands is the crash site of a Celestial. The Valley of Heroes, which is where Blizzard Knights fall from the heavens. Lightkeeper Temple, the former base of the Lightkeepers responsible for guiding ships through treacherous waters. Do you see now? Go through every Void Zone in the game and they're all significant. You could even incorporate the insta-wipe mechanics of bosses like the Primadon and the Ferryman into this definition of the Void Zone. Listen, the Void Zones exist because the depths desperately needs influence on the surface world. While the Ministry does exist, they ultimately have no idea what the drowned gods are trying to achieve. The Ministry just want to be reborn as immortal imitators. The Void Zones are the depths' vessels of change. Because the forces of the depths can't directly penetrate into the surface world, they instead use the Void. So think about it the next time you stumble upon a Void Zone. Think about what transpired there. What was so important that the very depths themselves chose to rear their heads from the murky waters to touch your soul? Void Zones are a fickle vehicle of possession, the depths daring you to touch their property. Just because you're above ground doesn't mean you're safe either. These Void Zones can hold carbuncles from the second layer, so it's clear that the Void can transport monsters at will. Every Void Zone has a purpose, my friend, to keep you away from power and advancement as long as possible, and if it's taken this long for us to grasp it, their purpose has likely already succeeded. Thank you for tuning into this theory, I wholeheartedly appreciate it. I wasn't super happy with how the last video turned out, time restraints and all that. This video has also been in hell for a while because I've been having problems with my voice, so I wanted to wait until I had that under control, but now I feel like I'm in a good place where I can, put it out there. Thank you guys for showing so much concern when it comes to potential burnout too. If I gave you all the praise that you deserve, I'd be here for 2 more hours. Thank you for being here and tuning in. Stay blessed and stay well, and well, I'll see you next time.